The truth is, you don't need any more motivation. What you need is momentum to get you to the finish line. Welcome to Chasing Genius, the number one show for creative geniuses in pursuit of their own creative genius. If you're new here, my name is Crystal and I am your host for this show. I'm happy to have you. Welcome to the fold. Welcome to the community. And if you're, a returning listener, welcome back. How you been? How's your week going? I hope everything is swell on your end. If you're a YouTube watcher, you notice that the background's a smidge different. We trying some new things out here. I think that's all part of the process of finding your own flow or finding your own voice or your own style of doing things. So I'm switching it up a bit, just wanting to try something different today and see how that goes. And I think that's the beauty of being an artist, man. You get to do whatever you want. If I say today I don't want to record in the same background, I would switch it up. That's what we gonna do. So yeah, that's really it. Still figuring out my flow with the podcast and things like that, but I have been enjoying the process of creating and making these. I've been getting a lot of great feedback, so thank you to everyone who has been tuning in, leaving comments, and just subscribing and showing love. It means a lot to me. You don't understand. I don't even care how many people watch these things, but the ones that do, it means a lot that it's impacting you in a positive way, because at the end of the day, that's all I want. I just want to impact and show love and inspire people in their own creative, artistic journeys, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to make magic. We're here to find our voice and find our style and be ourselves. So again, thank you to everyone who has been consistently listening to these. And speaking of consistency, that's what we're going to be talking about today, but through the lens of momentum. The truth is, you don't need any more motivation. What you need is momentum to get you to the finish line. That is the honest truth. So like many creatives, I'll speak for myself as a photographer, go through a shoot, you're excited, preparing for the shoot, you make a mood board, you know who your model is, you found the location, everything's gravy. Get to the shoot location, day of the shoot, you take your photographs, then you get home. After the shoot, you look at the photos, and then that's it. You had the motivation to do the shoot, but then you don't edit because you're lazy. Not necessarily because you're lazy, but because you're tired, honestly. You don't have the motivation to edit. And then you just put it on the back burner, and then weeks go by, you haven't necessarily edited those photos, you haven't taken a look at them. The motivation you had to do that shoot sustained you enough to get the shoot done, but it didn't sustain you enough to edit the photos and to curate the vibe that you had wanted to do when you planned the shoot in the first place. That is a lot of creatives. We have a lot of motivation, we have a lot of inspiration that propels us to create, but oftentimes we fall flat in the execution of these things because the motivation is not enough to take us to the finish line. Because the truth is, motivation is good, but it's fleeting. It's not consistent. It's a feeling. And a lot of times you're not going to feel like doing something. Nobody feels like going to work, but we still go to work anyway. Nobody feels like going to the gym, but people still go to the gym anyway. Nobody feels like meal prepping, but some people still do it anyway. Because despite how they're feeling, they understand that if they do these things, it will take them to the next level and helps them reach their desired goal. As creatives, a lot of times we depend on being motivated or inspired to be able to create. But the truth is, we can't rely on motivation. If you're a writer, for example, and your goal is to write a book, and you're waiting on feeling motivated to write that book, the days that you'll feel motivated will probably be 10% of the time in relation to the times when you don't feel like writing. So if you're waiting on motivation, the book's never going to get written. But if you set a small goal of, I'm going to write an hour every day or every other day, if you write an hour every day, within a month, you would have written 30 hours worth of content for that book. Now, yes, most of that might not be good and might not make the final cut, but because you've committed to writing an hour every day, by the end of the month, now you have 30 pages or 30 hours worth of something that has now set the foundation for your book. Or you could take, for example, myself and this show. I committed at the top of this year that I was going to drop an episode a week. By the end of the year, God willing, I'm hoping to have at least 52 episodes. Now, I have to take a step back because motivation is not going to lead me to having 52 episodes. Because to be honest, I still got to sit here and record. You know what I'm saying? I got to sit. I got to think about what I'm going to script. I got to find time to edit. But I have to figure out how am I going to set myself up for success. So I decided, I'm going to pick weekends where I'll just batch record things. And then throughout the week, do my best to edit an episode a week. That way, I'm already set up for success to be able to drop an episode every Sunday. Now, honestly, it might not be sustainable, and it might be sustainable. There might be a week where I can't do my pre-planned or the goals or follow the expectation, but I'm going to try my hardest because I've already built that momentum up. I've been consistently doing it since this year started. So now if I don't do it, I'm actually going to feel bad instead of, I'll just do it next week or just putting it off because I'm going to do it when I feel like it. Instead, I'm going to commit to editing an hour a day or an hour every other day and commit to recording every 2 weekends and record a lot of videos those weekends so it makes it easier for me to sustain that goal. Now, motivation is important because motivation is that inspiration that leads us to doing things, So like I'm motivated to make videos because it makes me happy, or I'm motivated to learn how to edit. So doing this is actually helping me, or I'm motivated to build a community and to meet people. So I keep doing it, and I'm motivated by the comments that y'all leave on these videos, So it's like I have people who are watching me, and that's inspiring me to keep going. But in order for me to have momentum, I have to be consistent even on the weeks that I don't necessarily feel like doing it. So what is momentum? So if any of you've taken a physics class, you know that momentum is like the force or that puts things in motion. So let's say there's don't laugh at the example, but let's say there's a rock at the top of a hill and you kick the rock down and it just rolls all the way down. That force that's pushing it down is the momentum, and it keeps rolling, and if anything gets in the way of that rock as it's in motion, it honestly gets destroyed or it gets hit or it gets, hurt. But let's say it gets to the bottom of that hill, and because there isn't any more force or strength that's pushing it down, it just kind of stops or it hits a standstill. That's when you don't have momentum. So when something's in motion, it's easier to keep it going when something's in motion than when it's not in motion. So if you've already committed to something, I think the best thing for you to do is to stay committed to that thing. The truth is, momentum is basically that discipline that you need to keep going, and once you've built that momentum / consistency up, the days that you don't do it, you actually feel it than the days when you just tell yourself, I'm going to do it tomorrow. Because when you tell yourself, I'm going to do it tomorrow, it's because you're relying on motivation. But because if you've already committed to doing that thing, and let's say you've done it 5 times in a row, 10 times in a row, 30 times in a row, you're going to be more inspired to keep it up because you've done it so many times in a row. And that's what momentum is, essentially, is that I've done it this many times in a row. I'm going to keep doing it because I don't want to fall off of doing something. But it doesn't also mean that if you do fall off, it's a bad thing, because momentum is something you can build at any time. It's just a matter of you taking the time to just start. And that's how you build momentum. It's just by starting. You can't run a marathon if you don't ever start running. You can't climb a mountain if you don't ever start climbing. So just thinking of it in that context of Everything starts with just one step. And the moment you take that initial step, it's easier to keep walking. It's easier to keep going because you've already taken that first step. And even if you do stop, or even if you do need a moment to take a break, you can always look back and say, yo, look how far I've come. I can keep going. And that in and of itself inspires you because you've seen how far you've come. And because you've seen how far you've come, it's easier to keep propelling forward. And like, you know, the saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, or if you lay a brick day by day by day, it's true. If you lay a brick every single day for 365 days, you'll have 365 bricks. If you lay a brick every other day, you'll have half of that. I can't do the math right now, but you'll have half of that, right? And I think if you break things up into smaller bite-sized pieces, that usually helps. Because a lot of times when we set goals for ourselves, we set like these immaculate goals, these incredibly big goals, which are awesome. We deserve to set as big as our heart desires when it comes to goals. But sometimes it's hard to conceptualize how exactly we're going to get there because we haven't broken the goals down into small bite-sized steps. So like, if your desire is to make a photo book, for example, then obviously the book is the main goal. But if you break that down into small pieces, it's like, I got to take the photographs, then I got to edit the photographs, and then I got to curate the photographs of like, what photographs do I actually want to include in the photo book. And then once you've broken that down, then you get into the design of the photo book. How do I want the photo book to be designed? Once you've broken that down into how you want the photo book to design, then you go into the layout of the photo book. Once you get into the layout of the photo book, now you have a photo book. And then you can get into like, who's going to print it? Who's going to be the publisher? How am I going to distribute it? How am I going to sell it? XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. But you see how breaking those things into small, manageable steps made it a lot easier for me to conceptualize how I'm actually going to make a photo book. The same goes for, again, the book of writing a book, the example I gave earlier. You might want to write a book. A book typically is like 300 to 400 pages, give or take. It depends on how big you want the book, but most books tend to be around that. There are 365 days in a year. If you commit to writing 1 page a day, maybe some days you might even feel inspired to write more than 1 page a day. But if you write 1 page a day, by the end of the year, you'll have an entire book, you know? And granted, not everything's going to make it. Not everything that you put your efforts to usually make the final cut. Even as I'm recording this podcast, there's going to be parts of it that I'm going to edit, that I rambled too much or didn't get my point across well, or I didn't, verbalize what I was trying to say in the best way. But that's okay, because you've made the thing that you've always wanted to make. And I think learning to do these things as artists will help us to be able to make more work. I think we get caught up in wanting to feel inspired or feeling like doing something that by the end of the year we haven't really done much, and it also plays with us wanting, our work to be perfect. And that's another conversation for another day, of course. But a lot of it boils down to feeling motivated to do that thing, because oftentimes the motivation is there, but then after a while it fizzles out and then we move on to the next thing. How many times have you had like a really great idea? You start working on that idea. You don't feel as motivated for it. Now you have another great idea. And now you just kind of jump ship and start working on that thing. And as you're working on that thing, the motivation for finishing the second thing kind of fizzles out. And now you jump to the next thing. And now you're doing that. And now by the end of the year, you have a bunch of uncompleted projects. Nothing was ever done. You felt very unproductive because you relied on motivation to get you to the end, but you didn't really have the discipline to be consistent to see anything to the end. And that's the difference between those who finish projects and those that don't finish projects, is that they don't rely on motivation, but they develop the momentum, the consistency, and the discipline to finish that thing. So a couple of tips that I have, just to, get the ball rolling, keep that momentum up. The year is still fresh. We still in the first quarter of the year. And yes, some things may not have materialized yet. You're still sowing those seeds. You're still watering them seeds. You're still waiting for harvest of the things that you have already planted. But in regards to the things that you want to complete and accomplish this year, it starts with number one, just starting. Stop waiting. Stop procrastinating. Stop telling yourself there's a better time, because there's no better time than the present. All you have is today. Truth be told, anything can happen tomorrow, and tomorrow never ends, because tomorrow is going to be tomorrow when you're at tomorrow. For real, for real. So all you have is this moment. The moment is always right now. So if there's something that you want to do, just start. Don't procrastinate on it, because 9 times out of 10, starting be the hardest part. Like, for me, when it comes to like editing, sometimes I'd be like, oh, like, I don't feel like doing it, or like whatever. Like, I don't even know, because like I don't ever have good excuses of why I never want to do something. But I just be like, nah, like I don't have the time to do it, or I don't have the energy to do it. But best believe, once I actually sit my butt down, load up the clips, open up my file, organize the stuff, it'd be hard for me to even get up to like take a break. Like, I'm like locked in, because the hardest part is always starting. And 9 times out of 10, once you start, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, 25 minutes in, 30 minutes in, like you have the motivation that you had to build up to then finish that thing. You know what I'm saying? So like, now the momentum is there. You feel me? The momentum has been created by you to start editing that thing. And now, before you know it, the video's done editing. So I think with anything, the hardest part is just starting. Just start. Don't overthink it. Just do what you can and get the ball rolling, because once the ball is rolling, it's hard to stop it. The second thing would be to set clear goals and expectations for yourself. We talked about this last week with imposter syndrome, about setting the bar too high that even you can't meet the bar. I think it's about us being honest with ourselves and being honest with what our efforts and our actions are in relation to that goal. A lot of times we have goals that we set for ourselves and expectations that we set to ourselves, but the actions that we do are not in alignment with that thing. So I'll use an example of going to the gym. I'm a hard gainer. It takes me a lot to gain weight. And it wasn't until recently, when I started tracking my calories, that I actually start seeing the scale move up a bit. And for the last 2 years of me training, I have gained some weight, but most of it is muscle. And for me, in order to like get to the next level, it required me to like actually be a bit more mindful of like, what am I actually eating? Am I eating enough calories in a day? Am I consistently eating enough? Am I eating the right things? Am I drinking enough water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Now that I've started tracking, I'm starting to see a difference in my body gaining weight. So the action of me, or the desire and the goal of me wanting to gain weight, before, it was not in alignment with my actions. I was just going to the gym. I wasn't keeping track. I wasn't eating enough. I wasn't drinking enough water. I wasn't doing any of that. But now that I've kind of shifted my efforts and my actions to be in alignment to what my goals and expectations are, now I'm able to kind of reap the benefit of meeting those goals, because I've adjusted the action to meet that goal. So that can look like, for yourself, like, what are your habits looking like? You know, are you setting yourself up for success every week or every day? Are you setting time aside to focus on your artistic craft? Are you setting days aside to focus on your artistic craft? Are you putting yourself in environments to keep you productive, or keep you focused and keep you locked in on that thing that you want to do? Are you putting yourself around people who keep you accountable for whatever it is that you want to do? Like, what are those things, and are they in alignment with what your goals and what your personal expectations are? And make sure that they're clear, you know, as clear as possible as to what you want to achieve once it's all said and done. And the third thing I would like to say is that consistency breeds results. So the more you're consistent, and consistency looks different for everybody. I think in our new day and age, like, we often kind of limit consistency to be like, oh, I have to do this thing every day. Like, if I don't do it every day, it means I'm not consistent. That is not true. You know, consistency could look like once a month. Consistency could look like twice a week, once a week. It could look like every day, sure, but then it could also look like every other day. Like, it could be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type deal. You know, it could be a Tuesday, Thursday type deal. It could be a every Sunday type deal. You have to determine what consistency looks like for you, and then just commit to that. It means being a person of your word. You know, you don't need other people telling you what to do and how to do it and when to do it and when to show up and how to show up. It's you being a person of your word. And at the end of the day, you're not going to see the results if you're not consistent. You're not going to see results in the gym if you're not consistently going to the gym. You're not going to see consistency in your skill set if you're not constantly practicing. You're not going to see consistency in the evolution of your visual style if you're not constantly trying to find what your visual style is and constantly exercising whatever that language is. So at the end of the day, what are the routines that you're putting in place for yourself, and how is it helping you get to the next level? You know, a lot of times we have a lot of bad habits. Like, that's the truth. We allow bad habits to dictate how we move instead of recognizing, you know, if this habit isn't serving me, I can always switch it up and try to get a better habit to serve me. It's not easy. You know, it's a lot easier to have a bad habit. Like, it's a lot easier to go out drinking every weekend with your friends, and it's a lot harder to say no. But in doing so and building up the foundation of what you want your good habits to be, it will be a lot easier in the long run to sustain it. So I hope all of this made some semblance of sense. I feel like I was kind of all over the place today, and that, you know, like I said, I'm trying something new myself. You know, I didn't want to script too much. I wanted to feel a bit more conversational at the same time, but I still want to, you know, I'm still learning. I'm still figuring out what my podcast style is. You know, I wanted to feel a bit more conversational instead of kind of just like talking at a camera or talking into a mic. But again, I'm not going to learn these things if I'm not consistently forcing myself to record and, you know, put myself out there and things like that. So as you learn, I'm learning too. You know, I'm also trying to rely more on momentum and less on motivation as well. But I do hope that with this, you're able to kind of conceptualize how you can do it for yourself and in your own artistic journey. Because at the end of the day, we want to be able to be consistent with ourselves and with our work. We do want to be motivated, but we also want to be able to see things to the end. We don't want to just have ideas and never see anything to the end because we're not motivated to complete it. That's not what being an artist is. Being an artist also means having the discipline and the consistency to breed the results and meet the goals that we want for ourselves. So again, thank y'all so much for listening. It has been real. I hope you have a great and powerful week. And if this episode helped you, you know, drop a gem down in the comment, leave something for somebody else to be inspired and to be motivated and to build that momentum that we all seek. And remember, the genius in me sees a genius in you, and I am always, always rooting for you. Peace.